There comes a point in every life when you realize that you've been carrying things that were never meant for your shoulders. You've spent sleepless nights trying to fix situations that only God can fix, replaying conversations in your mind, worrying about outcomes that haven't even happened. You try to plan, to predict, to control every little detail, because deep down you want to feel safe. But life doesn't always go according to your plans. And that's where the real test begins. The moment you try to take the place of God in your own story, you start to feel the weight that was never meant to be yours. Sometimes you think if you can just push harder, talk longer, convince more people, or hold tighter, you'll make everything work out. But the truth is, the tighter you hold, the more it slips through your fingers. Control feels like security, but it's actually a thief of peace. You were never designed to carry the pressure of the universe on your back. That's why worry feels so heavy, because it's not your assignment. Your job is to trust, not to control. When you learn to let go, you're not giving up, you're giving God permission to step in and do what only He can do. Letting go isn't a one-time decision, it's a daily practice. Every morning, you wake up and choose to release that burden again. You tell yourself, I don't have to know how this will work out. I don't have to fix everything today. You trade your anxiety for peace. You're striving for surrender. And little by little, something begins to shift inside you. You start to breathe easier. You start to feel lighter. That's what happens when you let go. You make space for God's hands to hold what yours can't. When you try to control everything, you close the door on miracles. God doesn't need your help to be powerful. He just needs your trust to be invited in. Think about all the times in your life when things worked out in ways you never expected. Those moments weren't the result of your perfect planning. They were the result of divine orchestration. The same God who handled those moments is still working today. But He won't fight you for control. He waits patiently for you to open your hands and say, God, I trust you with this. Sometimes we confuse surrender with weakness, but it's actually one of the greatest acts of faith. It takes strength to say, I can't do this on my own. It takes courage to let go of what you can't understand and believe that something better is coming. That's the kind of faith that moves mountains. Not the kind that tries to push the mountain alone, but the kind that says, God, you move it when the time is right. Surrender doesn't mean nothing is happening. It means everything is happening exactly as it should, under divine control. There will be moments when letting go feels like loss. You might lose a plan, a timeline, or a sense of certainty. But remember, what you lose in control, you gain in peace. And peace is priceless. When you stop striving to make everything work your way, you begin to see how beautifully God's way unfolds. You start noticing that the doors that closed were protection, not rejection. The delays were direction, not denial. You realize He was guiding you all along, even when you didn't understand. Maybe right now you're standing in the middle of something that feels out of control. The more you try to fix it, the worse it seems to get. That's your signal to step back and hand it over. You're not giving up. You're growing up in faith. You're choosing to trust that God's timing is better than yours. His plan is bigger than your imagination, and His ways are higher than your logic. The sooner you let go, the sooner peace finds you. When you let go, you also let God show off. You give Him room to do what only He can do: heal hearts, restore relationships, open doors, and make ways where there are none. The miracle you're waiting for may not show up until you stop trying to make it happen by force. Sometimes faith is simply standing still while God moves everything around you. It's trusting that the one who sees the whole picture knows exactly what piece goes where. And as you keep letting go, you'll start to see something beautiful happen inside of you. The fear that once controlled you begins to lose its grip. The worry that once consumed you starts to fade. You begin to live lighter, freer, more at peace. You realize that God's hands are much stronger than yours, and that whatever He holds, He sustains. Letting go doesn't just change your situation. It changes you from the inside out. Because the truth is, when you finally let go of control, you don't lose anything of real value. You gain everything that matters: peace, faith, trust, and the unshakable assurance that no matter what happens, you're safe in the hands of the one who's been in control all along. Worry is like a rocking chair. It gives you something to do, but it doesn't take you anywhere. It keeps your mind spinning, your heart racing, and your spirit restless. When you choose to shift from worry to worship, everything begins to change. You move from anxiety to assurance, from panic to peace. Worry magnifies the problem. Worship magnifies the promise. The moment you start to lift your eyes toward heaven and say, God, I know you're bigger than this. You invite His presence into your situation. You see, worry invites fear, but worship invites favor. There's a spiritual exchange that happens when you begin to worship in the middle of your worry. You might not see the answer yet, but worship says, God, I trust you anyway. It doesn't deny the problem. It declares the power of the one who can solve it. Worship takes the focus off what's wrong and puts it back on the one who makes things right. Every time you choose to thank God instead of complain, you're strengthening your faith. Every time you lift your voice in praise, even through tears, you're saying, God, I believe you're still in control. When you shift your heart from worry to worship, you silence the voice of fear. The same thoughts that once told you, you'll never make it, things will never change, start to lose their authority, because worship changes the atmosphere, not just around you, but inside you. It reminds your spirit that God has never failed you before, and He's not about to start now. Worry drains your energy, but worship fills it back up. Worry wears you out, but worship lifts you up. You can't be full of faith and fear at the same time. One has to leave for the other to live. Think of the times in your life when you were worried sick about something that eventually worked out. Maybe it didn't happen the way you imagined, but somehow it worked for your good. In those moments, you realize that worry was wasted energy. But if you had worshipped instead, you could have had peace through the process. Worship doesn't mean you have all the answers. It means you know who does. It's a declaration that says, even when I can't see what you're doing, I believe you're working. You might be facing a situation right now that looks uncertain. The job interview, the medical report, the family tension. You can't control the outcome, but you can control your attitude. Instead of letting fear fill your heart, let faith fill your mouth. Begin to thank God for what's coming. Say, Lord, I may not see the breakthrough yet, but I thank you because I know you're faithful. That kind of praise shifts the atmosphere. It tells heaven you trust, and it tells hell you're not afraid. Worship doesn't have to wait for the miracle. Worship brings the miracle closer. When you praise through pain, something powerful happens. Your focus changes. You stop magnifying what's wrong and start magnifying what's possible. That's when peace begins to flow like a river through your soul. That's when your mind quiets down and your heart begins to rest in the promise that God is still on the throne. Every time you choose worship over worry, you grow stronger in spirit. You train your heart to stay steady in the storm. The enemy wants you distracted, anxious, and fearful, but worship keeps you anchored. It reminds you that no storm lasts forever, and that no problem is greater than God's power. When you lift your hands in faith, heaven takes notice. The chains of fear begin to break, and new strength begins to rise inside of you. Even when tears fall, worship. Even when the door hasn't opened, worship. Even when the answer feels delayed, worship. Because worship is not about how you feel. It's about who He is. And He never changes. He's the same yesterday, today, and forever. When you focus on that truth, your worries begin to shrink in comparison to His greatness. So every time that anxious thought, trust thought tries to steal your peace, stop and turn it into praise. Say, God, I trust you. You've done it before, and you'll do it again. That simple act of faith disarms worry's power. It shifts your attention from the chaos to the Creator, from the burden to the blesser. Worry may knock on the door of your heart, but worship is what keeps it from moving in. Because when you learn to worship in the waiting, you discover that peace doesn't come from everything being perfect. Peace comes from knowing the one who is perfect is already working all things together for your good. And in that awareness, fear has no place to live, and worry loses its grip on your life. There are moments in life when what you're facing feels so overwhelming that you can't see any way out. The doors seem closed, the path looks blocked, and every option appears to have failed. That's when you must remind yourself, God specializes in the impossible. What's beyond your reach is still well within His. You might see an obstacle, but He sees an opportunity. You might feel trapped, but He's already designed your escape route. The same power that raised the dead parted seas and brought water out of a rock is still active today, working in your favor even when you can't see it. You may be standing before something that looks too big for you to handle. A financial mountain, a broken relationship, a dream that feels too far gone. But remember, The God you serve never asks you to figure it out on your own. He only asks you to believe. He takes what's impossible for man and turns it into a testimony of His glory. When your strength runs out, His begins. When your plans fail, His perfect plan steps in. What looks like the end to you is often just the beginning to Him. Sometimes God allows us to come to the end of ourselves so we can truly see His power. If you could fix it, you wouldn't need faith. If you could make it happen, you wouldn't need a miracle. But God works best when there's no other way. That's when His glory shines the brightest. It's in the darkest nights that His light is most visible. So if it feels like everything has fallen apart, don't panic. It may be the setup for something supernatural. The God who spoke light into existence doesn't need perfect conditions to bless you. He just needs your trust. We often say we believe in miracles, but when life gets tough, we forget what that really means. Miracles are not logical, and they're not earned. They happen when the natural ends and the supernatural begins. When the doctor says there's no hope, God says, watch me heal. When the bank says you're out of options, God says, I'll provide. When people walk away, God says, I'll send the right ones. That's how He works. Beyond reason, beyond limits, beyond expectation. He doesn't need a possible situation to show His strength. He needs faith that believes He can. Maybe you've prayed for years and nothing seems to change. Maybe every door has slammed shut. Don't give up. Closed doors don't mean God said no. Sometimes they mean He's preparing a better one to open. You don't have to understand how He'll do it. You just have to believe that He will. Faith is not seeing the whole staircase. It's taking the first step, even when you don't know where it leads. And when you take that step, heaven takes notice. God begins to move in ways you couldn't imagine. You may not realize it, but even now, God is working behind the scenes. He's moving pieces, aligning people, shifting situations, and setting the stage for your breakthrough. The things that seem delayed are not denied. They're developing. Sometimes the miracle isn't the change around you, it's the strength being built within you while you wait. God is never late. But He's never early either. His timing is perfect because His plan is complete. Think about the stories in your life when you thought you'd reached a dead end, but somehow came through stronger than before. Those weren't coincidences. They were confirmations that God's hand was guiding you all along. The same hand that carried you then will carry you now. He didn't bring you this far to abandon you. Every challenge is an opportunity for Him to show you that His power has no limit. What feels like a setback is often a setup for something greater. Faith means you don't have to see how it will happen. You just have to know who's making it happen. When you believe that God is still in control, your heart settles even while the storm rages. You stop trying to calculate how it will unfold and start resting in the assurance that it will. The God of the impossible has never failed, and He won't start with you. The situation you think is too hard is the very place where God wants to prove His faithfulness. Don't let your eyes deceive your faith. The mountain may look immovable, but the same God who created it can move it with a word. Keep trusting, keep believing, and keep standing firm. What's impossible for you is easy for Him. And as you keep walking forward, you'll see what once looked like an unshakable wall turn into an open door. You'll look back and realize that what was meant to break you actually built you. Because when God steps into the impossible, He doesn't just change your situation. He transforms your story into proof that nothing is too hard for Him. Fear is a thief that sneaks into your heart and steals your peace, your confidence, and your joy. It whispers lies that tell you you're not enough, that things will never change, that your best days are behind you. But faith speaks louder. Faith says, even if I can't see it, I still believe it. Fear focuses on what's missing. Faith focuses on who's present. Fear sees the storm. Faith remembers who's in the boat. Every time fear tries to grip your mind, you have a choice. You can feed your fear or you can feed your faith. And whatever you feed grows stronger. There will be moments when fear feels overwhelming, when it creeps in late at night and tells you you'll never make it, that you're too weak, too small, or too late. But faith reminds you that you're never alone. You have the Creator of heaven and earth walking with you, fighting for you, and working through you. When you feel like fear is taking over, speak faith out loud. Say, God, I know you're bigger than this. The sound of faith confuses the enemy and strengthens your spirit. You can't stop fear from knocking, but you can stop it from entering your heart. Faith isn't about denying reality. It's about declaring a greater reality. The doctor's report may be real, the struggle may be real, but so is the promise that God is your healer, your provider, your way maker. Faith doesn't ignore the problem. It looks at it through the lens of divine power. Fear sees a giant. Faith sees a chance for victory. The difference isn't in the situation. It's in your perspective. You don't have to feel brave to live by faith. You just have to choose trust over terror, one moment at a time. Sometimes fear shows up right before your breakthrough. It's the last test before the miracle. The closer you get to the promise, the louder fear tries to speak. It wants you to turn back, to settle, to give up too soon. But faith stands its ground. It says, I've come too far to quit now. Faith walks forward even when the path is unclear, because it knows the one who promised is faithful. Fear paralyzes, faith propels. The difference between defeat and destiny often comes down to which voice you choose to listen to. When you face fear with faith, something powerful happens inside you. You begin to feel stronger, not because the situation changed, but because your perspective did. Fear feeds on uncertainty, but faith thrives on assurance. Every time you say, God will do it for me, you're reminding yourself that His power is greater than your problem. You're declaring that no matter what happens, you're not fighting alone. And that confidence begins to build a shield around your heart that fear can't penetrate. Fear will always try to remind you of your past, your failures, your regrets, your mistakes. But faith looks ahead and says, my future is brighter than my history. Fear tries to trap you in what was. Faith frees you into what can be. You don't have to have it all figured out. You just have to take the next step. Each time you choose faith, you weaken fear's hold on your life. Courage isn't the absence of fear. It's moving forward in spite of it, knowing that God's strength is made perfect in your weakness. You may not realize it, but fear often shows up when something significant is about to happen. The enemy wouldn't fight you this hard if he didn't know something great was coming. That's why faith is so important. It reminds you that God's promise is bigger than your problem. The storm may rage, but it cannot stop the plan of God. When you choose to stand in faith, you become unstoppable because you're no longer depending on your own ability, but on His. Faith doesn't wait until everything feels safe or certain. It moves forward anyway. It believes that God is already on the other side of the challenge, preparing the victory. You don't have to know how He'll do it. Just know that He will. Every time fear says, "What if it doesn't work out?" faith answers, "What if it does?" Every time fear says, "You're not strong enough," faith says, "But God in me is." The battle isn't outside you, it's in your thoughts. Win the battle there, and you'll see victory everywhere. You were never meant to live a life ruled by fear. You were created to walk in boldness, confidence, and divine authority. The same Spirit that raised Jesus from the dead lives inside of you. That means fear has no legal right to control your life. When you feel afraid, remind yourself who lives in you. Speak faith into your atmosphere. Declare that no weapon formed against you will prosper, and watch how fear begins to shrink. Because the truth is, fear can only survive where faith is absent. When you fill your heart with trust, hope, and belief, there's no room left for fear to breathe. You'll begin to face challenges with confidence, knowing that whatever stands against you cannot stand longer than the God who stands with you. Faith doesn't always remove the battle, but it ensures you'll win it. And every time you choose faith over fear, you're walking one step closer to the victory that's already yours. Every new morning brings a choice. You can expect things to go wrong, or you can expect the goodness of God to show up. Expectation is the breeding ground for miracles. When you wake up with a heart full of faith, believing that something good is going to happen, you attract God's favor. You start to see opportunities where others see obstacles. You begin to walk with confidence, not because everything is perfect, but because you know who's guiding your steps. Expecting God's goodness isn't about ignoring problems. It's about trusting that His power is greater than them. When you expect good things, you shift the atmosphere around you. Your words change, your attitude changes, and so does your outlook. You stop saying, "Nothing ever works out for me," and start saying, "I know God is working all things for my good." That simple shift invites His presence into your day. Faith-filled expectation doesn't wait for proof. It stands on the promise. It doesn't need to see the blessing before believing in it. It believes because it knows God is faithful to His word. There are times when life tries to drain your expectation. when delays make you doubt and disappointments try to harden your heart. But don't let a temporary setback convince you that God's goodness has expired. Just because you haven't seen it yet doesn't mean it's not coming. He's a God of perfect timing, and what He has planned for you can't be rushed or cancelled. Stay ready, stay hopeful, and stay open, because when the right moment comes, it will happen suddenly, quicker than you imagined, greater than you prayed for. Your expectation is like a magnet. It pulls blessings into your life. When you live each day expecting favor, doors start opening that you didn't even knock on. People begin to show up with the help you needed. What looked impossible starts to shift. That's the power of a heart aligned with faith. Expectation says, God, I don't know how, but I know you will. It's choosing to believe that something amazing is already on its way, even when your circumstances say otherwise. Think of how children trust without doubt. When they're promised something, they don't ask 100 questions, they simply believe it's coming. That's the kind of expectation God wants you to have. Not a hesitant, fearful hope, but a bold confidence that says, my Father always keeps His word. When you live with that kind of trust, you carry a different light. You walk into the day expecting divine encounters, unexpected provision, and supernatural peace. Maybe life has taught you to lower your expectations, to settle for less because you don't want to be disappointed again. But faith doesn't settle. It stretches. It believes again after the setback. It hopes again after the heartbreak. It looks forward even when the past still hurts. You can't live a life of victory with a defeated mindset. Expectation lifts your eyes above the pain and points them toward the promise. The moment you start expecting again, heaven begins aligning things in your favor. Every blessing begins with expectation. Before the miracle comes the mindset. Before the breakthrough comes belief. You can't receive what you don't expect. So instead of waking up dreading another hard day, wake up declaring, something good is going to happen for me today. Speak it out until your heart believes it. The words you say have creative power. They build the world you walk into. So fill your mouth with faith and watch how your day changes. Even in the waiting, keep expecting. Even when you feel forgotten, keep expecting. God hasn't stopped being good just because life got hard. He's still writing your story, still arranging divine appointments, still working behind the scenes in ways you can't imagine. Don't let delay deceive you into thinking He's done. He's not. The best chapters are still ahead, and they're filled with His favor. Expectation fuels gratitude. When you believe something good is coming, you start thanking God before it arrives. You become more aware of His presence in the small things. The quiet moments, the little victories, the answered prayers you once overlooked. Gratitude strengthens expectation, and together they open the door for more blessings to flow into your life. So every morning, lift your eyes, take a deep breath, and say, God, I'm ready for what you have for me today. Carry that faith wherever you go. Expect His goodness in every detail, in the conversation, in the challenge, in the unexpected turn. Because the truth is, when you live expecting God's favor, you won't just see blessings. You'll walk right into them, fully aware that they were prepared for you all along.